Thomas Tuchel's time at Chelsea is often remembered as a success for how it began, and a failure for how it ended. It began by taking a young team in turmoil to the Champions League final, where Chelsea became champions of Europe for only the second time in the club's history. Many believed the next season would see the start of a new dynasty, as Chelsea spent record fees bringing in superstar striker Lukaku, who returned with a point to prove and a crown to claim. Instead, a series of unfortunate and frustrating events would lead to a trophyless season, as questions began to be raised about Tuchel's ability to get the best out of his attacking talent. As new ownership arrived, many believed the new season would be the one that was promised, especially given the level of investment. Instead, just a few weeks later, Thomas Tuchel was fired. The promised dynasty now a memory of what could have been. So that begs the question, why did Thomas Tuchel get fired? How had the club spent so much with so little to show? And who is to blame for how things ended up? This is the story of how Thomas Tuchel failed to build a dynasty at Chelsea. January 22, 2020 would see Thomas Tuchel arrive at Chelsea, replacing club legend and manager Frank Lampard, who had failed to gel new signings while clashing with ownership. A strange choice given Tuchel's own history, yet the team's outlook changed almost immediately, with Chelsea going on a 13-game unbeaten run. Winning tends to heal most wounds, and any lingering doubt in Chelsea fans' hearts was quickly put to rest as Chelsea toppled Manchester City, en route to another Champions League title. Once again, the club had proved chaos was a ladder for them, but unlike last time, where experienced veterans had led the way, this time experienced management had been the difference. For Tuchel and the players, this was a dream come true, and as the new season dawned, excitement was in the air. Chelsea now had the manager to compete with Liverpool and Manchester City. The summer transfer window would see ownership invest heavily to strengthen the side. The prior season had shown they had a strong defence and a highly talented midfield, but lacked a clinical striker. Jorginho had finished as the club's top league goalscorer with 9, the lowest amongst Big Six clubs, and Chelsea's lowest since 1974. If the club was to compete, they would need a better striker, and £100 million was spent to bring Lukaku back to the club where he had once seemed destined for greatness. With the main issue of the previous campaign now addressed, optimism was high going into the next season, and it started well, with Tuchel making full use of his new striker as Chelsea won 8 games in a row, topping the Premier League as Christmas dawned. Unfortunately, injuries, illness and a drop in form for their strikers derailed their title bid. They had only claimed 2 wins from their last 5 when a trip to Aston Villa came, and after going in level at the break, Tuchel reintroduced Lukaku for the second half. A turning point in the season, as he scored his first goal to end a 3-month Premier League drought, then won a penalty for Jorginho to cap off an excellent performance. Lukaku was back to his brilliant bullying best, and as the second half of the season dawned, there was hope that he could help Chelsea finish the season with a title. Unfortunately, just as he was beginning to regain his form, Lukaku had already set the wheels in motion for an interview that would rock Chelsea's season and his future. The timing could not have been worse. Lukaku had poured gas onto a fire which appeared to be fading, while disrespecting the club and undermining Tuchel. In the aftermath of the drama, and having initially dropped him for a game, Tuchel offered Lukaku a chance at redemption, starting him in 4 successive league matches. The result? No goals, no assists, and against Crystal Palace, just 7 touches of the ball. For Chelsea, the league title was long gone. Their Champions League title defence was over at the hands of Real Madrid, and they lost the FA Cup final for the second time. Tuchel's team had failed to push on from last season's heroics, and while Lukaku bore much of the blame, the rest of Chelsea's attacking talent had also failed to contribute. Questions began to be asked about Tuchel's ability to utilise his offensive talent, as Chelsea finished 23 goals short of Manchester City and 18 less than Liverpool. And while before, dogged defensive work had often come up clutch for the side, this season had seen their defence ship 33 goals, 7 more than leaders Manchester City and Liverpool, though much of this was believed to be due to the uncertainty surrounding the club at that time. The summer transfer window saw Thomas Tuchel dealing with the aftermath of sanctions that had seen key leadership leave and new ownership arrive, tasking him with handling transfer activity. This might have been less of an issue had Tuchel and the board seen things similarly, but they didn't. Tuchel favoured players who bought into his high-pressing, defensively minded ideology, while Chelsea's new owner was keen to kick off his reign with some superstar signings, and their relationship only got worse as Tuchel offered little time or explanation behind his decisions. While Chelsea's problematic strikers were shipped out, the club spent over $250 million, the highest spend in that season's Premier League. It was still unclear how exactly they would all fit together, especially given Chelsea had yet to replace either of their departing strikers. The new season saw Thomas Tuchel struggle to find his best formation and team, and this would be seen in the team's results as new signings struggled to gel, ultimately culminating in an embarrassing away loss in the Champions League, the aftermath of which saw Thomas Tuchel fired. A gut punch to the fans. The new ownership was supposed to herald a new era for Chelsea, one that would see them back their manager, but now just a handful of games into the season, it was over, in a decision that suggested ownership panicked. After all, they had just acquired Tuchel's priority striker. But reports over the next few days would paint a different picture, claiming that Tuchel's relationship had already gone beyond the point of no return, over his handling of transfer activity and fallouts with key players. Chelsea arguably looked their best in their European winning season, and the hundreds of millions spent since did little to change the team. While Lukaku's failure had been a key reason behind this, the rest of Chelsea's attack had also failed to develop under Tuchel. All the while, their defence, once their greatest asset, regressed. And the stats back this up. Tuchel's first 50 games saw his side concede just 24 goals. The second, 53, more than double his first half. But the stats don't paint the full picture. Much of the decline was during sanctions, uncertainty, an injury crisis, and personal struggles that Tuchel endured. And it was unlikely that anyone could utilise so many new players in such a short time span, while dealing with as much pressure from the media as Tuchel did. Ultimately, Thomas Tuchel's time at Chelsea is a reminder that no manager will ever be bigger than the club, and that even a Champions League title, an incredible record, loyalty during the toughest of times, and the love of the fan base won't save you if ownership once changes. But despite this, Thomas Tuchel's legacy at Chelsea is already set in stone. He arrived in their toughest moment, took over from a club legend and a team in crisis, and led them to European glory, while rallying the fanbase. Then, while battling sanctions, uncertainty, and egotistical superstar signings, he led Chelsea to 3 finals and their best finish in half a decade. After his links to the board shattered, and left to deal with them directly, he continued to try, and while fans will never know if he could have turned the sinking ship around, he helped put Chelsea back on top of world football again, if only briefly, while developing some of the superstars of the future. And for that, fans will always be grateful to Thomas Tuchel.